Daniel Brooks sat across from a woman he'd never met, his coffee untouched, his carefully rehearsed exit lines dissolving in his throat. The wheelchair hadn't been mentioned. The setup had been deliberate, and the woman watching him with those unreadable dark eyes wasn't offering explanations or apologies. She was waiting to see what kind of man he actually was. In the span of 30 seconds, Daniel understood he'd been tested before the conversation even began. What he didn't know yet was that passing this test would unravel every safe assumption he'd built about his small, controlled life. If you're curious how a single father and an artist nobody saw coming built something real from absolutely nothing, stay with me through this story. And hey, drop a like and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this one travels. Daniel Brooks had learned to build his life in straight lines. Wake at 5:30, make breakfast, pack his daughter's lunch with the crust cut off, because Mia insisted bread tasted better that way. Drop her at school by 7:45. Arrive at the job site by 8:15. Work until the light died or the work ran out, whichever came first. Pick Mia up from after-school care. Dinner. Homework. Bath time. Bedtime stories that always ran longer than planned because his daughter had inherited his need to know how things ended. Then silence, the kind that settled into the corners of his small rental house, like dust, familiar and undisturbed. It was a good life, a stable life, the kind of life that didn't leave room for variables. "You're turning into a hermit," Rob had said 3 weeks ago, leaning against the truck bed while Daniel loaded his tools. Rob Martinez was the kind of guy who made friends with strangers in grocery store lines and considered loneliness a moral failing. "Mia's 6, man. She's not going to fall apart if you go out for a beer." "I go out," Daniel had replied, not looking up from the circular saw he was securing. "Work doesn't count." "Why not? You're there." Rob had laughed, but it was the laugh that came before a lecture. "You know what I mean? When's the last time you did something that wasn't about carpentry or parenting?" Daniel had closed the tailgate harder than necessary. "I'm 32, not dead." "Could have fooled me." The conversation had ended there, but Rob was persistent the way water was persistent. He didn't break through walls so much as wear them down over time. 2 weeks later, he'd cornered Daniel during lunch break with a proposal that sounded reasonable until you examined it closely. "My wife's friend needs a date." Daniel had kept eating his sandwich. "No." "You didn't even ask what she's like." "Don't need to. I'm not dating. One coffee. That's it." Melissa's been bugging Jennifer for months about setting her up, and Jennifer's been bugging me, and now I'm bugging you. Circle of life, man. Just do this one thing, and I'll never ask again. "You'll ask again next month." "Okay, yeah, probably, but I'll feel worse about it." Daniel had wanted to say no, should have said no, but Rob had the quality of being genuinely likable even when he was being annoying, and there was also the uncomfortable truth that Daniel's social life had narrowed to the width of a 2x4. Mia's teacher had recently suggested, gently, carefully, that it might be good for Mia to see her father have relationships outside of work and parenting. Not because Daniel was doing anything wrong, but because children learned how to be people by watching the adults around them be people. So Daniel had agreed to coffee. 1 hour, no expectations, and absolutely no second date. That was how he ended up walking into Bennett's Cafe on a Saturday morning with his stomach tight and his mind already calculating exit strategies. The place was small but busy, the kind of neighborhood spot where regulars had their own tables and the barista knew everyone's order. Daniel scanned the room, looking for a woman sitting alone, wondering if he'd even recognize her from Rob's vague description. "Brunette. Pretty. You'll know her when you see her." He saw her. She sat near the window in a manual wheelchair, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Dark hair pulled back in a loose braid, a green canvas jacket that looked expensive but worn in. She wasn't looking at her phone or pretending to be occupied. She was simply sitting there, watching the door. And when their eyes met, she didn't smile or wave or give any indication that she was relieved he'd shown up. She just looked at him, steady, measuring. Daniel's first thought was that Rob hadn't mentioned the wheelchair, and his second thought was that the omission had been deliberate. His third thought was that he should walk over there and sit down before his hesitation turned into something she'd interpret as pity or discomfort. He crossed the room. "Melissa?" he said when he reached her table. "Iris," she corrected. Her voice was lower than he'd expected, with a precision to it that suggested she chose her words carefully. Melissa's Jennifer's friend. I'm Jennifer's sister. Oh. Daniel processed this. So the setup got passed down the chain. She gestured to the chair across from her. You can sit, or you can leave. I won't be offended either way. Daniel sat. He didn't know what else to do. Up close, Iris Monroe was harder to read than from across the room. She had the kind of face that gave nothing away. Not hostile, not friendly, just observant in a way that made him aware of his own body language. He resisted the urge to check if his shirt was tucked in or if he had sawdust in his hair. Coffee? She asked. Sure, black. She raised her hand slightly, and a server appeared almost immediately, a young woman with purple hair who clearly knew Iris well. Hey, Iris. Usual? Please. And a black coffee for... She glanced at Daniel. Daniel Brooks. For Daniel Brooks, who looks like he's reconsidering his life choices. The server, her name tag said Riley, grinned. Aren't we all? She disappeared toward the counter. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. Was it that obvious? That you didn't know about the wheelchair? Yes? Iris leaned back slightly, her fingers tapping once against the armrest. Rob's wife didn't tell him, Rob didn't tell you, and now you're sitting here trying to figure out if asking about it makes you seem intrusive, or if not asking makes you seem like you're pretending it doesn't exist. That's pretty accurate, actually. I've had practice reading that particular expression. She paused. For the record, you can ask, or not. I'm not fragile about it. Daniel considered this. How long have you used the chair? 3 years. Car accident. Other driver ran a red light. I got a compression fracture at T12, incomplete spinal cord injury, and a settlement that paid for a lot of physical therapy but didn't fix everything. She delivered this information the way someone might describe a job history. Factual, unemotional, and clearly practiced. I can stand for short periods with support. I can't walk more than a few steps. The chair's permanent. I'm sorry that happened to you. Most people are. Iris tilted her head slightly. But you don't sound like you're about to tell me I'm inspiring for getting coffee. Why would that be inspiring? You're just having coffee. Something shifted in her expression, not quite a smile, but close. You'd be surprised how many people think existing in public is an achievement worth congratulating. Riley returned with their drinks. Black coffee for Daniel, something with foam and cinnamon for Iris. Daniel wrapped his hands around the mug, grateful for something to do with them. So, Iris said, Rob tells me you're a carpenter. Residential, mostly renovations and custom built-ins, some furniture when I have time. Do you like it? Daniel thought about this. Most people asked what he did, not whether he liked it. Yeah, I do. There's something satisfying about building something that wasn't there before, making a space work better for the people who live in it. Making things fit, Iris said. Exactly. I do something similar, different medium. She pulled out her phone, swiped a few times, then turned it toward him. The screen showed a watercolor illustration, a fox sitting beneath a tree, looking up at stars that seemed to drip like rain. The style was loose but controlled, whimsical without being childish. I illustrate children's books. Daniel studied the image. This is really good. It pays the bills, sometimes more than that. She took her phone back. I had a series that did well a few years ago, before the accident. I'm rebuilding now. Slower, but steadier. What kind of stories? The kind where the small thing turns out to be important, the overlooked thing turns out to be powerful, that sort of thing. She sipped her coffee. Kids like stories where the world makes sense differently than adults expect. My daughter would agree with that. Iris set down her cup. You have a daughter. Mia. She's 6. Daniel pulled out his wallet, flipped it open to a photo he'd taken last month at the park. Mia grinning with a gap where her front tooth used to be, holding a pine cone like it was treasure. She's everything, basically. Iris looked at the photo for a long moment. Where's her mother? Most people danced around that question. Daniel appreciated the directness. Not in the picture. Never really was. It's been just me and Mia since she was born. That must be hard. Sometimes, but it's also just life. You build the structure you've got materials for. There's that carpentry metaphor again. I've only got the one. This time, Iris definitely smiled. Small, but real. I doubt that. They talked for another 20 minutes. It should have been awkward. Two strangers thrust together by well-meaning friends, navigating the uneven terrain of first impressions. But Daniel found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't expected. Iris didn't fill silence with chatter. She didn't perform enthusiasm or ask questions she didn't care about the answers to. She just existed across from him, clear and present, like a person who'd learned not to waste time on performances. When his coffee was empty, Daniel figured that was his cue to offer a polite exit. I should probably head out, Iris finished. I figured. You've got that look people get when they're mentally checking their schedule. Sorry, I need to pick up Mia from my mom's house by noon. You don't have to apologize for having a life. Iris started to reach for her bag, then paused. Can I ask you something? Sure. Did you come here expecting someone different? Daniel considered lying, decided against it. Honestly, I didn't have any expectations. Rob's descriptions of people are pretty useless. He once told me a guy was medium height, and the guy turned out to be 6'4". But the wheelchair surprised you. Yeah. Are you glad you stayed? Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. At the way she held herself with a kind of self-possession that had nothing to do with mobility and everything to do with knowing exactly who she was. At the way she'd taken control of the conversation without dominating it. At the intelligence in her eyes that made him feel seen in a way that was uncomfortable and interesting at the same time. Yeah, he said. I am. Iris nodded slowly. Okay. Okay? That's the right answer. She pulled a business card from her bag, slid it across the table. My number's on there. If you want to do this again, actually want to, not because Rob's pressuring you, text me. If you don't, that's fine too. No hard feelings. Daniel picked up the card. Simple design. Her name, phone number, email, and a small watercolor fox in the corner. What if I text you tomorrow? Then I'll know you're either genuinely interested or extremely polite. What if it's both? Then I'll probably say yes to coffee again. She pulled her jacket more securely around her shoulders. Fair warning, though, I don't do relationships that start with pity or novelty. If you're interested in me because you think dating someone in a wheelchair makes you a good person, stay home. If you're interested because you think I'm interesting, then we can figure out the rest. Daniel stood, slipping the card into his wallet next to Mia's photo. I think you're interesting. The wheelchair's just part of the picture, not the whole thing. Good. Iris wheeled back from the table, executing the movement with the kind of practiced efficiency that spoke to years of adaptation. Then I'll wait for your text. Or not. Either way, thanks for not running. Thanks for giving me the option to stay. He watched her navigate through the cafe. People moving chairs slightly, Riley calling out a goodbye. Iris responding with a wave that suggested this was routine, normal, her world functioning exactly as she'd built it. Then she was gone, out the door, and down the ramp to the parking lot. And Daniel was left standing in Bennett's cafe with an empty coffee cup and the strange sensation that his carefully structured life had just shifted on its foundation. He texted her that evening. This is Daniel, the carpenter with one metaphor. If you're free next Saturday, I know a park with good walking paths. And before you point out the irony, I mean it has good paved paths. Wheelchair accessible. I checked. Her response came 10 minutes later. I appreciate the research. Yes. 10 a.m.? And bring stories about your daughter. I want to know what kind of father texts a woman the same day he meets her. The kind who's tired of building a life that's all straight lines, he typed, then deleted it because it sounded like something from a movie. Instead, he sent 10 a.m. works. See you then. That night, after Mia was asleep and the house had settled into its familiar quiet, Daniel sat at his kitchen table with a beer he wasn't really drinking and thought about the way Iris had looked at him, like she was reading the grain of wood, checking for knots and weaknesses, seeing what the surface couldn't tell you. He'd spent 3 years building a life that kept him and Mia safe. Predictable schedules, reliable income, no complications. It had worked because he'd made it work. because he'd sanded down every variable until nothing unexpected could slip through. But sitting across from Iris, he'd felt something he'd almost forgotten existed: curiosity. Not about her disability or her accident or the mechanics of her daily life, but about her, about the sharp intelligence behind those careful observations, about the way she'd claimed space in that cafe like someone who'd fought for every inch of it, about the watercolor fox on her business card and the stories she told about small things being important. It scared him a little, the wanting. But it also felt like standing in front of a project he didn't quite know how to build yet, that moment before the first cut, when everything was still possible. The park Daniel had chosen was small but well-maintained, with paved loops that wound through old-growth Douglas firs and opened occasionally onto views of a creek. He arrived early, found a bench near the main path, and waited. Iris appeared at exactly 10 o'clock, wheeling up the path with the kind of steady rhythm that suggested she did this often. She wore jeans and a gray hoodie, her hair loose around her shoulders this time. No makeup, no performance. "You're punctual," she said by way of greeting. "Carpenters have to be. Show up late and framers steal your tape measure out of spite." Daniel stood, fell into step beside her as she started down the path. "How was your week?" "Productive. I finished illustrations for a publisher in Seattle, sent them off yesterday." She glanced at him. "Yours?" "Built a custom bookshelf for a guy who has 2,000 books and counting. Spent 3 days on structural support calculations. His wife thinks he's insane." "Is he?" "Probably. But the bookshelf's going to be beautiful." They walked. Daniel walking, Iris wheeling, through dappled sunlight and the smell of cedar and earth. Daniel had worried the silence would be awkward, but it wasn't. Iris seemed comfortable with quiet, and Daniel had learned through single parenthood that not every gap in conversation needed filling. "Tell me about Mia," Iris said eventually. So Daniel did. He told her about the pine cone collection that had taken over the windowsill, about the time Mia had cried for an hour because she'd accidentally stepped on a snail, about the elaborate bedtime stories that always involved a princess who solved problems with engineering rather than magic. "She sounds like you," Iris observed. "God, I hope so. I'm all she's got." "That's not true." Daniel looked at her. "What do you mean?" "She's also got herself. Kids aren't just reflections of their parents. They're their own people from the start." Iris paused where the path widened into a small clearing overlooking the creek. "My parents spent years trying to figure out where I came from. My mom's a litigator. My dad's a surgeon. I draw pictures for a living. They love me, but they've never really understood me." "Do they need to?" "No, but it would have been nice if they'd tried." She positioned her chair at an angle that gave her a clear view of the water. After the accident, they tried to fix everything. Hired the best doctors, found experimental treatments, spent a fortune on equipment I didn't ask for. What they didn't do was ask me what I actually needed. "What did you need?" "Time. Space to figure out who I was going to be now that everything had changed." She pulled a sketchbook from the bag hanging on her chair, opened it to a blank page. They meant well. But sometimes meaning well and being helpful are different things. Daniel watched her pull out a pencil, start sketching the creek with quick, confident lines. "Do they know you're dating?" "I'm not dating. I'm having coffee with a carpenter who knows one metaphor." "Fair enough." "But no, I don't tell them much about my personal life. They'd either worry I'm being taken advantage of, or they'd throw a parade because I'm finally moving on." She made air quotes with one hand, not looking up from her sketch. "Grief isn't linear, and neither is recovery. People want you to arrive at normal and stay there. They get uncomfortable when you keep evolving." Daniel sat down on the bench near her chair. "Is that what you're doing? Evolving?" "Trying to. Some days I'm better at it than others." She added shading to the water, her hand moving in loose, flowing strokes. "What about you? Are you evolving or just surviving?" The question landed harder than she probably intended. Daniel looked out at the creek, at the way light moved on the surface of the water, constant and changing at the same time. "I don't know," he said honestly. "For a long time, surviving felt like enough. Make sure Mia's safe, fed, happy. Make sure the bills get paid. Don't mess up anything major. That was the goal." "And now?" Now I'm sitting in a park with someone I barely know, wondering if surviving is actually the same thing as living. Iris stopped sketching. She didn't look at him immediately, but he could feel the weight of her attention shift. When she finally turned her head, her expression was unreadable again. That careful neutrality that he was starting to recognize as her default when something mattered. "That's a dangerous question to start asking," she said quietly. "Why?" "Because once you ask it, you can't go back to not knowing the answer." They sat there for a while, not talking, just existing in the space they'd created. Daniel on the bench, Iris in her chair, the creek running its course below them. Eventually, Iris went back to her sketch, and Daniel watched her work, fascinated by the economy of her movements, the way she could suggest an entire tree with a few strategic marks. "Can I see it when you're done?" he asked. "It's not done. It's never done. That's the problem with art. You have to decide when to stop, not when it's finished." But she angled the sketchbook toward him anyway. The drawing was looser than her children's book illustrations, more impressionistic. But even half-finished, it captured something essential about the place. The way the trees leaned together overhead, the sense of water moving just out of sight, the feeling of being tucked away from the world. "You made it better than it is," Daniel said. "No, I just showed you what was already there. You have to train yourself to see past the obvious stuff. The broken fence, the litter, the dead branch. Look for what the place is trying to be." "Is that what you do with people too?" Iris smiled, a real one this time, reaching her eyes. "Are you asking if I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to be?" "Maybe." "Good. Stay curious. People who stop being curious about themselves get boring." They stayed at the park for another hour. Iris sketched. Daniel talked about a project he was planning, a treehouse for Mia that would be sturdy enough to last decades. Iris asked technical questions about load-bearing structures that surprised him with their precision. Apparently, illustrating children's books required more engineering knowledge than he'd assumed. "If you build things that kids use, you have to think about safety without making everything sterile," she explained. "My books have characters who climb trees and build forts and navigate obstacles. I need to know what's actually possible so the drawings don't feel fake." "Have you ever built anything yourself?" "Not since before the accident. I used to do woodworking, actually. Small stuff. Boxes, frames, a coffee table once. I liked working with my hands." She flexed her fingers, studying them. "I can still do detail work. Fine motor skills weren't affected, but power tools and I don't mix well anymore. Balance issues. If you ever want to try again, I've got a shop. Plenty of clamps and stable work surfaces." Iris looked at him for a long moment. "Are you offering me access to your tools or asking me on a third date?" "Can it be both?" "I suppose it can." She closed her sketchbook, slipped it back into her bag. "But let's finish the second date first. I'm hungry. There's a food cart near here that does Vietnamese sandwiches. You buying?" "Only if you teach me how to see past the obvious stuff." "Deal." They ended up at a picnic table near the food carts, eating banh mi and arguing about whether structure or creativity mattered more in art. Iris insisted they were inseparable. Daniel argued that structure enabled creativity rather than limiting it. Neither of them won, but both of them enjoyed the fight. When they finally said goodbye, Iris heading to her car, Daniel to his truck, she paused at her driver's side door. "Daniel?" He turned. "Yeah? Thanks for not being careful with me." "What do you mean?" "Most people treat me like I'm made of glass. You just treat me like a person. It's refreshing." Daniel walked back toward her, stopped a respectful distance away. "You are a person. That's the whole point. I know that. But you'd be surprised how many people forget." She opened her car door, began the practiced routine of transferring from chair to driver's seat, collapsing the wheelchair, storing it. Daniel didn't help, didn't hover, just stood there in case she needed something. She didn't. When she was settled, window rolled down, she looked at him one more time. "Text me when you get home safe." "You text me when you get home safe." "Deal." He did. She did. And that became the pattern, each of them checking in, making sure the other had arrived wherever they were going, creating a small ritual of care that felt earned rather than assumed. Over the next 2 weeks, they saw each other 3 more times. Coffee again. A bookstore where Iris bought illustrated nature guides and Daniel bought a carpentry manual he didn't need. A Saturday afternoon at her studio apartment where she showed him the progression of a book project, from rough sketches to finished paintings, and he found himself understanding her work in a way that surprised him. "You're building narratives," he'd said, studying the sequence of images that would eventually become a published book. "Same as I build staircases. One piece leads to the next." "Exactly, except my structures are emotional instead of physical." "Are they that different?" She'd considered this. "No, I suppose they're not. Both of them have to hold weight. Both of them have to last. Both of them fail if the foundation is weak." That night, after he'd picked up Mia and made dinner and supervised homework and read the obligatory bedtime story, Daniel lay in bed thinking about foundations, about the life he'd built on the principle of no complications, no variables, no risks, about the way that life suddenly felt less like stability and more like stagnation, about the way Iris looked at him like she was still deciding what he was made of, and the way he wanted to prove he was worth the investigation. His phone buzzed, a text from Iris. "Are you awake?" "Yeah." Mia just went down. "You?" "Finishing a painting. Can't sleep until it's done. Occupational hazard." "What's it about?" "A kid learning to navigate a forest?" She's scared at first, then she realizes she's been leaving breadcrumbs without meaning to. Her way back is already there. She just has to trust it. Daniel read the message twice, understanding that she wasn't just describing a painting. "Sounds like a good story," he typed. "Think it'll sell?" "I think it needs to exist whether it sells or not. Some stories aren't about the market. They're about saying the thing that needs saying." "What thing is that?" "That being lost isn't the same as being gone. That you can find your way back to yourself even after everything changes. That the path forward isn't always obvious, but it's always there." Daniel stared at his phone screen, at words that felt like they'd been written for him specifically, and realized that Iris Monroe had already seen past his careful surfaces to something he hadn't been ready to admit. He'd been lost for 3 years and calling it stability. "When can I see you again?" he sent. "Tomorrow? I'll bring coffee to your workshop. I want to see where you build things." "You sure?" "It's messy." "Good. Neat workshops belong to people who don't actually use them." He sent her his address. She sent back a thumbs up and a coffee cup emoji, the first emoji she'd ever used with him, and Daniel understood that something had shifted between them. They'd moved past polite getting to know you and into something that felt like genuine investment. It should have scared him more than it did. Instead, lying in the dark with his phone glowing in his hand and his daughter sleeping down the hall, Daniel Brooks felt something he'd almost forgotten existed: anticipation. Not anxiety about what could go wrong, but actual excitement about what might go right. And if that wasn't evolution, he didn't know what was. Iris arrived at Daniel's workshop the next morning with 2 cups of coffee and an expression that suggested she'd been awake for hours. The workshop was tucked behind his rental house, a converted garage with high ceilings, good light, and the accumulated chaos of someone who worked with their hands for a living. Sawdust covered most horizontal surfaces. Tools hung on pegboards in arrangements that made sense only to Daniel. Half-finished projects occupied every corner, a rocking chair missing its runners, a dining table waiting for its final coat of finish, the skeletal frame of what would eventually become Mia's treehouse. "This is better than I imagined," Iris said, wheeling through the open door and executing a slow turn to take everything in. She handed him one of the coffees. "You actually use this space." "Every day I can." Daniel accepted the cup, gestured toward the table saw. "That's my favorite piece. Bought it used 5 years ago. Best investment I ever made besides Mia's car seat." "Show me what you're working on." He led her to the back corner where the treehouse components were laid out in organized sections. Floor joists, wall frames, the curved pieces that would form the roof. Iris set her coffee on a workbench and pulled herself closer, running her fingers along the joints where he'd connected the pieces with mortise and tenon joinery instead of simple screws. "You didn't have to make it this complicated," she observed. "No, but Mia's going to use this for years. Maybe her kids will use it someday. I want it to last." Daniel picked up one of the floor joists, showed her how the pieces interlocked. "My dad taught me carpentry before he died. He used to say that how you build something when nobody's watching tells you what kind of person you are." Was he right? About that? Yeah, I think so. Daniel set the joist back down. What about your parents? You said your mom's a litigator and your dad's a surgeon. Did they teach you anything useful? Iris smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. They taught me that success is measured in outcomes. Cases won, lives saved, tangible results. She traced the grain of the wood with one finger. Art doesn't work that way. You can paint something beautiful and nobody buys it. You can pour your heart into a project and the publisher passes. Success in creative work is subjective, which drove my parents insane when I was growing up. Do they support what you do now? They tolerate it. That's not the same thing. She looked up at him. After the accident, they wanted me to go back to school, get a practical degree, something that would guarantee income and stability. As if those things actually exist. You said no. I said I'd rather be poor and making art than comfortable and miserable. She wheeled back slightly, creating space between herself and the treehouse pieces. We didn't talk for 6 months after that. My dad kept sending me job listings for graphic design positions at hospitals. My mom kept casually mentioning that law firms were always looking for people with attention to detail. But you kept painting. I kept painting, sold some pieces, landed a book contract, proved them wrong just enough that they couldn't keep pushing. She picked up her coffee, took a long drink. Now they're proud of me in that careful way parents are when they don't really understand what you do, but you're paying your bills so they can't complain. Daniel leaned against the workbench. Mia's teacher asked me last month what I wanted Mia to be when she grows up. I told her I wanted Mia to be happy. The teacher looked at me like I'd missed the point of the question. You didn't miss anything. That teacher did. That's what I thought. He watched Iris examine his tools, the way she cataloged everything without touching anything she didn't have permission to touch. When I was in high school, my guidance counselor told me carpentry was a backup plan, not a real career. That I should go to college, get a degree, aim for management. Did you? Took 2 semesters of community college. Hated every minute. Dropped out and apprenticed with a contractor instead. Daniel picked up a hand plane, tested the blade with his thumb. My mom cried. She thought I was throwing my life away. Now she tells her friends her son's a craftsman and shows them pictures of the furniture I've built. People want you to succeed in ways they understand, Iris said quietly. When you succeed in ways they don't, it makes them uncomfortable. Like you've found a path they didn't know existed. Is that what happened with you and your parents? Partially, but it's also... She paused, choosing words carefully. After the accident, I think they mourned the version of me that could walk more than they celebrated the version that survived. They never said it out loud, but I could feel it. This sense that I was less than I used to be. Daniel set down the hand plane. That's not fair to you. No, but grief makes people selfish sometimes. They were grieving their able-bodied daughter. I was grieving my old life. We were all stuck in the same loss, just from different angles. She met his eyes. Eventually I realized I couldn't wait for them to catch up. I had to build a new life whether they understood it or not. And did you? Build a new life? I'm trying to. That's why I agreed to coffee with a stranger. That's why I keep saying yes when you text me. That's why I'm here in your workshop drinking mediocre coffee and asking questions about treehouse construction. She smiled, and this time it was genuine. I'm trying to figure out who I am now, and sometimes that means letting new people see me. Daniel understood then what she'd been doing these past weeks, not testing him exactly, but testing herself, seeing if she could still do this, be vulnerable, be curious, be open to possibility. He felt the weight of that trust, the responsibility of holding it carefully. Your coffee's not mediocre, he said. It's just not as good as mine. That's fighting words, Brooks. Prove me wrong. Come to my house for dinner next Friday. I'll make coffee. You can judge it properly. Iris tilted her head, considering. Are you inviting me to meet your daughter? Eventually, yeah. But not next Friday. She'll be at my mom's for the weekend. This would just be us. Actual dinner. Actual conversation. No time limit because neither of us has to be anywhere. That sounds like a date. It is a date? What makes you think I want to date you? Daniel crossed his arms, leaning back against the workbench. You've texted me every day for 2 weeks. You brought coffee to my workshop. You asked about my daughter, my work, my dad. You told me about your parents, your accident, your art. People don't do that for someone they're only casually interested in. Maybe I'm just friendly. You're not. You're careful. You choose who you let close, and you've been letting me closer. He held her gaze. So yes, I think you want to date me. And yes, I'm inviting you to dinner. The question is whether you're brave enough to say yes. Iris laughed, a surprised, genuine sound that transformed her face. Brave enough? You're calling me out? Absolutely. Fine. Yes. Friday, 7 o'clock. But if your coffee's not as good as you claim, I'm leaving. Deal. She stayed another hour, watching him work on the treehouse components and asking questions that revealed a technical understanding he hadn't expected. When she finally left, Daniel stood in his workshop surrounded by sawdust and the lingering presence of someone who'd seen his space and understood what it meant. Not just the work itself, but the care he put into it, the intention behind every choice. That night he texted her. You were right, the coffee was mediocre. Her response came immediately. I know, I was being polite. Next time I'm bringing my own. Next time you can make it at my house. Fair warning, my coffee maker is from 2003 and sounds like it's dying. Perfect. I'll bring my own machine. And ingredients for dinner. You can't cook and make good coffee. Nobody has that much talent. Is that a challenge? It's a fact. I'll see you Friday, Brooks. Try not to burn your workshop down before then. The week dragged in the way time does when you're anticipating something. Daniel worked his regular jobs, cabinets for a kitchen remodel, shelving for a home office, repairs on a deck that should have been replaced years ago. He picked up Mia from school, helped with homework that was suddenly more complicated than addition and subtraction, read increasingly elaborate bedtime stories featuring a princess engineer who'd recently acquired a dragon with mechanical problems. On Thursday night, after Mia was asleep, he cleaned his house with the kind of attention he usually reserved for finished carpentry. Vacuumed. Scrubbed the bathroom. Changed the sheets even though Iris wasn't going to see his bedroom. Probably. He wasn't sure what the evening would involve, but he wanted the option of spontaneity without the anxiety of a messy house. Rob called while he was wiping down the kitchen counters. Jennifer says you and Iris have been texting. Daniel wedged the phone between his shoulder and ear, kept cleaning. Jennifer's very interested in other people's business. She's excited. She thinks you two are good together. We've been on like 4 dates. 5, technically. Coffee counts twice. Rob's voice held that familiar tone of someone about to offer unsolicited advice. So it's going well? It's going well. Daniel rinsed the cloth, draped it over the faucet. She's coming for dinner tomorrow. Oh, damn, dinner at your place? That's serious. It's just dinner. Daniel, I've known you for 6 years. You've never invited anyone over for dinner, not even me. You invited yourself over that one time and brought your own food. Because you explicitly told me you weren't cooking for me, Rob laughed. Look, I'm just saying this is good. You deserve this. Daniel leaned against the counter, suddenly tired. Do I? What kind of question is that? The kind I ask myself at 2 a.m. when I can't sleep. He rubbed his eyes. I'm a single dad with a 50-hour work week and 0 romantic experience from the past 7 years. What do I have to offer someone like Iris? Are you seriously asking me that? Yeah, I am. Well, Rob was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that meant he was actually thinking instead of just waiting to talk. You want to know what Jennifer said when I told her about you and Iris? Not really, but you're going to tell me anyway. She said Iris has been alone for 3 years by choice, that she's turned down dates, ignored setups, shut down every well-meaning friend who tried to fix her up with someone. She said yes to coffee with you because Jennifer specifically told her you were different. Rob paused. And you know what makes you different? You don't need to be the hero of someone else's story. You're just steady, present, real. That's rare, man. Don't undersell it. Daniel absorbed this. When did you get wise? I've always been wise. You just never listened before. They talked for a few more minutes about nothing important, work, weather, Rob's ongoing battle with his lawnmower. When Daniel hung up, the house felt less empty than it usually did. Less like a space he was just occupying and more like a space that could hold possibility. Friday arrived with overcast skies and the kind of gray light that made Portland feel like it was underwater. Daniel left work early, stopped at the grocery store, bought ingredients for pasta carbonara because it was the one dish he'd perfected during the sleep-deprived months after Mia was born. He cleaned the house again, even though it was already clean, set the table, changed his shirt twice, felt ridiculous about the whole thing, but did it anyway. Iris arrived at 7 exactly, wheeling up the ramp he'd installed 2 days ago without telling her. She stopped at the top, looking at the ramp, then at him. "When did you do this?" "Tuesday. Took 3 hours." Daniel held the door open. "You can still use the front steps if you want. I just figured options are good." She wheeled inside without commenting further, but he caught the expression on her face. Something between gratitude and disbelief, like she couldn't quite process someone anticipating her needs without making a production of it. His house was small but organized, living room that flowed into the kitchen, Mia's toys corralled in baskets, furniture that was functional rather than decorative. Iris did her customary survey of the space, taking everything in with that careful attention he was learning to recognize. "You built the bookshelf," she said, pointing to the floor-to-ceiling unit that occupied most of one wall. 2 years ago, Mia kept knocking over the store-bought ones. "And the coffee table." "Last winter. The old one had sharp corners. Mia split her lip on it trying to retrieve a toy." "Everything here is about Mia." Daniel considered this. "Yeah, I guess it is." "That's not a criticism, just an observation." Iris positioned herself near the kitchen island. "What are you making?" "Carbonara." "Unless you're vegetarian, in which case I'm improvising." "I eat everything. Show me how you make it." So he did. Iris watched from the island, asking questions about technique and timing, offering commentary about the one semester she'd taken a cooking class in college and learned that following recipes required more patience than she possessed. Daniel moved through the familiar motions, boiling water, crisping pancetta, whisking eggs, and found himself relaxing into the rhythm of it. "My dad taught me this," he said, stirring the pasta into the sauce. "Not the recipe itself, but the principle. He said cooking was like carpentry. Follow the fundamentals, but don't be afraid to adjust based on what's in front of you." "Did he cook a lot?" "Every Sunday. My mom worked weekends sometimes, so Dad would make these elaborate meals. Nothing fancy, but always good." Daniel plated the pasta, added fresh black pepper and Parmesan. "He died when I was 22. Heart attack. No warning. Just gone." "I'm sorry." "Me too. I think about what he'd make of Mia. What kind of grandfather he would have been." Daniel carried the plates to the table, set them down. "But then I think maybe he is part of her in a way. The things he taught me, I'm teaching her. The treehouse I'm building uses techniques he showed me, so maybe that's enough." Iris wheeled to the table, transferred to the chair with practiced efficiency. She took a bite of the pasta, closed her eyes briefly. "Okay, this is actually really good." "Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not surprised. I'm impressed. There's a difference." She took another bite. "And your coffee better live up to the hype, or this whole relationship is built on false advertising." "Relationship?" "Don't get excited. I'm using the term loosely." "How loosely?" "Loose enough that I'm not making any promises. Tight enough that I'm here on a Friday night instead of homeworking." She met his eyes across the table. "Is that okay?" Daniel nodded. "That's okay." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that felt earned rather than awkward. Outside, rain began to fall, a soft patter against the windows that made the inside feel warmer by contrast. When their plates were empty, Daniel made coffee with his allegedly superior technique, and Iris admitted, grudgingly, that it was indeed better than what she'd brought to his workshop. "I'm never going to hear the end of this, am I?" she said, cradling the mug. "Probably not." They moved to the living room, Iris choosing the couch while Daniel took the armchair. Rain continued its steady rhythm. The lamps cast warm pools of light. Everything felt suspended, separate from the usual rush of time. "Can I ask you something?" Iris said eventually. "Sure." "Why did you say yes when Rob set us up?" Daniel thought about this. "Honestly, I was tired of everyone telling me I'd stopped living, and maybe I was curious to see if they were right. Were they? Yeah, I think they were. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. After Mia was born, I just shut down everything that wasn't about keeping her safe. Dating felt irresponsible. Relationships felt like complications I couldn't manage. So I built this life that was all structure and no room for anything unexpected. That sounds lonely. It was. But lonely felt safer than hurt. Iris set down her coffee mug. I know that feeling. After the accident, I cut off everyone who couldn't handle the new version of me. Friends who got weird about the wheelchair, family members who treated me like I was fragile. Even the guy I'd been dating for 2 years. He stuck around for 6 months, then told me he couldn't see a future with someone who had limitations. He sounds like an asshole. He was, but he was also honest, which I appreciated more than pity. She looked down at her hands. So I decided I was better off alone. No expectations, no disappointments, just me and my work. What changed? Nothing dramatic, just time and therapy. And eventually realizing that being alone because you choose it is different from being alone because you're afraid. She looked up at him. When Jennifer told me about you, I almost said no. But then she mentioned you were a single dad, and I thought, maybe he understands. Maybe he knows what it's like to have your life split into before and after. I do know that. So do I. And maybe that's enough of a foundation to build on. Daniel stood, crossed to the couch, sat down beside her, close but not crowding. Can I tell you something that might scare you off? Now I'm curious. Go ahead. I like you. Not in a casual way. Not in a let's see where this goes way. I like you in the way that makes me rearrange my schedule to text you during lunch breaks. In the way that makes me build ramps I'm not sure you'll ever use just because I want you to have options. In the way that makes me think about what life looks like with someone else in it after 3 years of convincing myself I didn't need that. Iris was very still. That's a lot to put on a 5th date. I know, but I'm 32 and I have a daughter and I don't have time to pretend I feel less than I do. If that's too much too fast, tell me now and we can slow down. Or stop. Whatever you need. What I need... Iris stopped, started again. What I need is for you to understand that I don't know how to do this. Before the accident, I was good at relationships. I knew the steps. I knew how to be someone's girlfriend, but now everything's different, and I don't know if I can be what someone needs. What if I'm not asking you to be anything except yourself? That's a nice idea, Daniel, but realistically, dating me is complicated. Accessibility issues, medical stuff. The fact that some places I just can't go without significant planning. She gestured at her legs. This isn't going away. It's permanent, and I need to know you understand what you're signing up for. Daniel reached for her hand, waited until she gave it to him. I'm not signing up for a disability. I'm signing up for you. And yeah, the wheelchair is part of that, but it's not the whole thing. You're brilliant and stubborn, and you make me think about things differently. You challenge me. You see me. That's what I'm choosing. You say that now, and I'll keep saying it, as long as you'll listen. He squeezed her hand gently. I'm not asking for promises or commitments or anything you're not ready to give. I'm just asking you not to run because you're scared I can't handle reality. Let me prove I can. Iris studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face for something. Doubt, pity, performance. Whatever she was looking for, she apparently didn't find it. She shifted closer, closing the distance between them, and kissed him with a kind of deliberate intention that made his breath catch. When she pulled back, her expression was serious. Okay. Okay. Okay, I won't run. Not yet, anyway. But if this gets complicated, it's already complicated. That's not a reason to stop. She smiled, and this time there was relief in it. You're very sure of yourself. No, I'm very sure of you. That's different. They sat together on the couch while rain fell and the evening stretched into night, talking about everything and nothing. Mia's upcoming school play, Iris's next book project, Daniel's plans for the treehouse, Iris's complicated relationship with her parents, the small rituals they'd each built to make their lives work. It was the kind of conversation that wandered without destination, comfortable and meandering, the kind you could only have when you weren't performing for each other anymore. Around midnight, Iris reluctantly announced she should head home. Daniel walked her to the door, watched her navigate down the ramp he'd built, and felt something shift in his chest, the old structure of his life making room for new possibility. "Daniel?" she called from the bottom of the ramp. "Yeah?" "Thank you for dinner, and the ramp, and this. Any time. I mean it. You could have pushed, made this harder than it needed to be, but you didn't. You just gave me space to figure it out. That's what you do for people you care about." She nodded slowly, like she was filing that information away. "I'll text you tomorrow." "I'll be waiting." He watched her drive away, then went back inside to a house that suddenly felt different, less like a fortress, and more like a home that could expand. He cleaned the kitchen, put away the dishes, stood at the window looking out at rain-slicked streets, and realized Rob had been right. He deserved this. Not because he'd earned it through suffering or sacrifice, but because being a good father and a decent person didn't mean he had to be alone. Because structure and spontaneity weren't opposites. They were partners in building something that could last. And for the first time in 3 years, Daniel Brooks allowed himself to hope that what he was building with Iris Monroe might be strong enough to hold them both. The text came at 7 the next morning, while Daniel was making pancakes and Mia was explaining in elaborate detail why her stuffed elephant needed to attend the school play rehearsal. "I didn't run." "That counts for something, right?" Daniel smiled at his phone, flipped a pancake with his free hand. "It counts for everything. Coffee later? Can't, working. But tomorrow? Same park? It's a date." Mia looked up from her elephant's extensive wardrobe requirements. "Who are you texting?" "A friend." "What kind of friend?" Daniel set down his phone, focused on the pancakes. "A good one." "Is it a girlfriend?" "It's a friend who happens to be a girl, yes." Mia considered this with the seriousness of someone conducting an investigation. "Emma's mom has a boyfriend. He comes to soccer games and brings orange slices." "That's nice of him." "Are you going to bring orange slices to someone?" Daniel plated the pancakes, set them in front of his daughter. "Maybe someday. We'll see. Can I meet her?" "Eventually, but not yet. Right now she's just my friend, and I want to make sure we're good friends before you meet her." Mia drowned her pancakes in syrup. "That makes sense. Emma's mom said you have to test drive people before you let them be important." "I don't think that's exactly what she meant, but the principle's right." Daniel sat down with his own plate. "Besides, you're the most important person in my life. I wouldn't bring someone around unless I was sure they were good enough. I'm good at judging people. I can help." "I know you are. And when the time's right, I'll definitely want your opinion." This seemed to satisfy her. They finished breakfast, got ready for the day, and Daniel dropped Mia at his mother's house before heading to a job site where he spent 8 hours installing custom cabinets and thinking about the way Iris had kissed him, deliberate and sure, like she'd made a decision and was committing to it. He met her at the park Sunday morning. The weather had cleared, leaving everything sharp and bright in that particular Pacific Northwest way where the world looked freshly washed. Iris was already there when he arrived, sitting in her chair near the bench they'd claimed as theirs, sketching something in her notebook. "You're early," he said, sitting down beside her. "I'm always early. Habit from when I could walk. Show up late and people assume it's because of the wheelchair. Show up early and they can't make assumptions." She turned her sketchbook toward him. "What do you think?" The drawing showed 2 figures on a bench, one sitting, one in a wheelchair beside them. They weren't looking at each other, just existing in the same space, comfortable with proximity. In the background, trees and water suggested without detail, the focus entirely on the figures and the space between them. "Is that us?" Daniel asked. "Does it bother you if it is?" "No, I'm just surprised you draw me. I draw what I'm thinking about. Lately, I'm thinking about you." She closed the notebook. "How was your weekend with Mia?" "Good. She asked about you." Iris went still. "What did you tell her?" "That you're my friend, that she'll meet you when the time's right, that she's the most important person in my life, and I wouldn't introduce her to someone unless I was sure." "And what did she say?" "She offered to help me judge your character. Apparently she's good at reading people." Iris smiled. "She sounds like you." "She's better than me, less cynical, more willing to believe in good things." Daniel stretched his legs out, crossed them at the ankles. "I want you to meet her, but I also want to make sure we're solid first. Kids get attached fast, and if this doesn't work out, you don't want her hurt. I understand. Iris was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I want to meet her too. But you're right to wait. Better to be certain than to rush. They spent the morning walking the park trails, Daniel matching his pace to Iris's chair, both of them falling into the easy rhythm they'd developed. Iris talked about a book project that was frustrating her, an editor who wanted major revisions that would fundamentally change the story. Daniel listened, asked questions, offered the kind of practical problem-solving he brought to carpentry projects. What if you just said no? He suggested. It's not that simple. Publishers have more power than illustrators. If I push back too hard, they might kill the whole project. But if you change it the way they want, is it still your story? Iris stopped wheeling, looked up at him. That's the question, isn't it? How much do you compromise before you're not making art anymore? You're just making product. I don't know. But I know that you're good at what you do because you have a vision. If you let someone else dilute that vision, what's the point? The point is getting paid, keeping the lights on, not going back to my parents and admitting they were right about needing a practical career. But even as she said it, she sounded uncertain. Daniel crouched down so they were eye level. What does your gut tell you? My gut says fight for the story. But my gut doesn't pay rent. No, but your gut is the reason you're good at this. And if you stop listening to it, you'll end up making work you don't believe in. That's a different kind of cost. Iris held his gaze for a long moment. When did you become so wise about creative work? I'm not wise. I just know what it's like to compromise on something important and regret it later. He stood, continued walking. Early in my career, I took a job building spec homes for a developer. Production work. Everything cheap and fast and barely adequate. The money was good, but every house I built felt like a piece of myself I wasn't getting back. After 6 months, I quit. Went back to custom work for less money, but more integrity. Do you regret it? Never. Because now when Mia asks what I do, I can tell her I build things that matter. Things that last. If I'd stayed in production work, I'd just be telling her I build things that sell. Iris resumed wheeling, but slower now, thoughtful. I'll fight for the story. Good. Even if it means losing the contract. Especially if it means that. She laughed. You're a bad influence, Brooks. Or a good one, depending on perspective. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. Coffee twice a week. Dinners at Daniel's house when Mia was at his mother's. Long text conversations about everything from children's literature to the structural integrity of deck joists. Iris started spending time at Daniel's workshop, sketching while he worked, both of them comfortable with parallel existence. Daniel learned the subtle ways her pain manifested, the tightness around her eyes, the shift in how she held her shoulders. Iris learned to read his stress in the set of his jaw and the methodical way he cleaned his tools when work wasn't going well. They learned each other's languages. Then came the outdoor concert. It was Iris's idea, a local band playing at a waterfront park, free admission, casual atmosphere. She'd been excited about it, texting him links to their music, planning what time they'd arrive to get good positioning. Daniel had agreed without reservation, glad to see her enthusiastic about something social. They arrived early, found a spot on the grass with a clear view of the stage. The evening was perfect, warm but not hot, a breeze off the river, the kind of golden light that made everything look staged for a photograph. Iris transferred from her chair to a blanket Daniel had spread out, and for the first hour, everything was exactly what it should have been. Good music, easy conversation, the comfortable silence of people who didn't need constant entertainment. Then the crowd grew denser. People pressed closer, staking out territory, jostling for better views. A group of college kids set up directly in front of them, blocking the stage. Someone's foot caught on Iris's wheelchair, nearly tipping it. A woman trying to navigate through the crowd stopped, looked down at Iris, and said with performative sympathy, "Oh, sweetie, can you see okay from down there?" Daniel felt Iris tense beside him. "I'm fine," Iris said, her voice flat. "Are you sure? We could help you get closer." "I said I'm fine." The woman exchanged glances with her companion. That particular look of pity mixed with offense that people wore when their charity was rejected. They moved on, but the damage was done. Daniel noticed the way Iris's hands clenched, the way she'd pulled into herself. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah, just people." But it didn't stop. Over the next 30 minutes, Daniel watched a dozen small humiliations accumulate. The couple who spoke slowly and loudly at Iris like she was hard of hearing. The guy who patted her shoulder without permission while squeezing past. The constant awareness that people were noticing her, making assessments, forming opinions about her body and her presence and her right to occupy space. Halfway through the second set, Iris turned to him. "I want to go." "Now?" "Now." They left without discussion. Daniel folded the blanket, collapsed Iris's chair, followed her to the parking lot, where she transferred into her car with movements that were efficient but rigid. He'd driven separately, so he stood by her driver's side window, uncertain what to say. "I'm sorry," Iris said, not looking at him. "For what?" "For dragging you here. For leaving early. For this." She gestured vaguely at herself, at the chair, at the situation. "Iris, I thought I could handle it. The stares, the comments, the constant reminder that I'm different. But I can't. Not tonight." She finally met his eyes, and he saw exhaustion there. Not physical tiredness, but the deeper kind that came from constantly defending your right to exist. "I think I need to be alone for a while." "How long?" "I don't know." Daniel wanted to argue, to fix it, to promise that next time would be different. But he'd learned enough about Iris to know that wasn't what she needed. She needed space to process, to rebuild whatever had been stripped away by the evening's casual cruelties. "Okay," he said. "Take whatever time you need. I'll be here when you're ready." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." He reached through the window, found her hand. "Whatever this is, whatever we're building, it doesn't disappear just because you need time." She squeezed his hand once, then let go. "I'll text you." "Okay." But she didn't. 3 days passed with silence, then a week. Daniel sent one message, "I'm here whenever you need me," and received no response. He threw himself into work, picked up extra jobs, spent his evenings working on Mia's treehouse with a focus that bordered on obsessive. Rob noticed, commented that Daniel seemed distracted. Daniel's mother asked if everything was all right. Mia, with the uncanny perception of 6-year-olds, asked if his friend was still his friend. "I think so," Daniel told her. "Sometimes people need space to figure things out." "Even friends?" "Especially friends." On the 8th day, Daniel found something in his mailbox. Not a letter. A drawing. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind Iris used for finished work. The image showed a man sitting alone on a park bench, his posture suggesting waiting but not desperation. Trees in the background, water suggested with minimal lines. But it was the detail that struck him, the way she'd captured exactly how he sat, one ankle crossed over the other knee, his hands clasped loosely, his face turned slightly toward empty space as if expecting someone to occupy it. She'd drawn him waiting for her. No note, no explanation. Just the evidence that even while pulling away, she'd been thinking about him, seeing him, carrying him with her into whatever space she'd needed to occupy alone. Daniel looked at the drawing for a long time, understanding what she couldn't say in words. That leaving wasn't about him, wasn't about doubt, wasn't about not caring. It was about the particular exhaustion that came from navigating a world designed for bodies like his and not bodies like hers. It was about needing to retreat, to recover, to remember who she was when people weren't constantly reminding her of what she wasn't. He texted her a photo of the drawing. "This is beautiful. Thank you." Her response came an hour later. "I didn't leave because of you." "I know." "Do you?" "Yeah, I do." "You left because being seen is harder than being invisible sometimes. Because the world's exhausting when you're constantly explaining your right to exist. Because vulnerability is terrifying and you needed to remember how to be alone before you could risk being together." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "How do you understand that?" "Because I've been there. Different reasons, same feeling. After Mia was born, I disappeared for a year. Just work and parenting and nothing else. My mom kept trying to drag me to social things, and I kept refusing because facing the world meant facing questions I didn't have answers to. Single dad, baby mama drama. All my friends moving forward while I was stuck changing diapers. Eventually I had to come back, but I needed that year to figure out who I was in the new situation. So you're not mad? Not even a little. But I miss you. I miss you too. Can I see you? No pressure, just coffee, or the park, or I can come to your place. Whatever feels safest. The reply took 5 minutes. The park. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Our bench. I'll be there. Daniel slept better that night than he had in a week. The next morning he arrived at the park 15 minutes early, sat on their bench, and waited. When Iris appeared at exactly 10, wheeling up the path with her usual steady rhythm, something in his chest loosened. She stopped in front of him, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "Hi," she said finally. "Hi. I'm sorry I disappeared. You don't have to apologize." "I do, though, because you deserved better than silence." She positioned her chair at an angle that let her see both him and the water. "After the concert, I just spiraled. Started thinking about all the ways dating me is complicated, all the things you'd have to deal with, accessible restaurants, ramps that don't exist, people staring, the constant awareness that we're visible in ways other couples aren't." "Iris, let me finish." She took a breath. "I convinced myself you'd realize it wasn't worth it, that eventually you'd get tired of the logistics and the stares and the reality of what being with me actually means. So I left before you could leave me." Daniel leaned forward. "Do you remember what I said at dinner? About not signing up for a disability, but signing up for you?" "I remember." "Did you think I didn't mean it?" "I thought you meant it at the time. But meaning something and living it are different things." "You're right, they are." Daniel reached for her hand, waited until she gave it to him. "So let me live it. Let me show you that I'm not going anywhere just because things are complicated. Let me prove that what I feel isn't conditional on everything being easy." "Why?" The question came out raw, vulnerable. "Why would you choose this when you could date someone without complications?" "Because you're not a complication. You're a person, a specific, particular person who makes me think and laugh and want to be better at being human. The wheelchair's part of that, sure, but it's not the defining thing. You are." Iris looked away, but not before he saw tears in her eyes. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of believing you, of trusting this, of getting attached and then having it fall apart because I couldn't handle one stupid concert." Her voice broke slightly. "I hate that the world makes me feel like I have to be strong all the time. Like I can't have bad days or hard moments without proving everyone right about how difficult it is to be with someone like me." Daniel squeezed her hand. "You're allowed to have hard days. You're allowed to leave concerts early and disappear for a week and struggle with the world being exhausting. That doesn't make you difficult. It makes you human. You say that now, and I'll keep saying it for as long as you need to hear it." He pulled her hand closer, held it between both of his. "I'm not perfect either, Iris. I've got a daughter who comes first, always. I work too much. I'm not great at expressing feelings. I sometimes disappear into projects and forget to text back. We're both complicated humans trying to figure out how to exist together. But that's what relationships are. Choosing someone's complications because the whole package is worth it." She finally looked at him, tears streaking her face. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I, so we'll figure it out together." "What if I run again?" "Then I'll wait. Like I did this time. Like I'll do every time you need space, because you're worth waiting for." Iris pulled her hand back, wiped her eyes, then wheeled closer until her chair was right up against the bench and she could lean her head against his shoulder. Daniel wrapped his arm around her, held her while she cried quietly, and understood that this moment of collapse and recovery was the real test. Not the easy dinners or the flirtatious texts or the good days when everything worked, but this, the hard moment when staying was difficult and leaving was tempting, and choosing to stay anyway meant something. They sat there for a long time. Eventually Iris stopped crying, straightened up, looked at him with red eyes and a tremulous smile. "Okay," she said. "Okay? Okay. I'm choosing to believe you. I'm choosing to stay instead of running. I'm choosing to trust that this is real, even when I'm scared it isn't. That's all I'm asking." but I need you to understand something." Her voice was serious now, steady. "There will be more hard days, more concerts I have to leave early, more moments when the world is too much and I need to retreat. I can't promise I'll always be easy to love. I'm not asking for easy. I'm asking for real." She studied him, searching his face for doubt or performance or hidden reservation. Whatever she found there satisfied her. "Okay, real. I can do real." "Good, because I'm pretty invested at this point, and backing out now would be really inconvenient." She laughed, watery but genuine. "Inconvenient? I built you a ramp. Do you know how much lumber costs? You're ridiculous. You like ridiculous." "Yeah." She leaned against him again, softer this time, more relaxed. "I really do." They stayed at the park for another hour, talking through what had happened at the concert, Iris explaining the particular exhaustion of constant visibility, and Daniel listening without trying to fix or minimize. When they finally left, Iris accepted his invitation to dinner the following weekend, and this time when they said goodbye, it felt less like an ending and more like a pause, something temporary rather than terminal. That night, Daniel hung her drawing in his bedroom, where he'd see it first thing every morning, a reminder of what it meant to wait for someone worth waiting for, and the particular courage it took to believe that being seen could be safe instead of scary. The dinner happened on a Tuesday because Mia had a sleepover at a friend's house, and Daniel's carefully structured schedule suddenly had an unexpected gap. He texted Iris at noon. "Mia's gone for the night. Want to come over? I'll cook. What are you making?" "Whatever you want. Dangerous offer. I want Thai curry." "Then Thai curry it is. 7 p.m.? I'll bring wine." Daniel left work early, stopped at an Asian market he'd never been to before, and spent 20 minutes on his phone researching curry recipes while standing in the spice aisle. The store owner, an elderly Thai woman who watched him with amused patience, eventually walked over and asked what he was trying to make. "Green curry," Daniel said, "for someone important." "You cooked Thai food before?" "No." "She know this?" "She will when she tastes it." The woman laughed and proceeded to walk him through the market, selecting ingredients and explaining techniques with the brisk efficiency of someone who'd taught this lesson many times before. By the time Daniel left, he had a shopping bag full of ingredients he couldn't pronounce and handwritten instructions on the back of a receipt. Iris arrived at 7 carrying a bottle of white wine and an expression that suggested she'd spent the day arguing with someone, probably her editor based on the text conversation they'd had earlier about the book revisions. Daniel took the wine, led her inside, and watched her survey the ingredients spread across his kitchen counter. "You actually went to an Asian market," she said. "Was I supposed to use grocery store curry paste?" "Most people would have." "I'm not most people." Daniel started prepping vegetables, his movements methodical. "Besides, you said you wanted Thai curry. I'm not going to half-ass Thai curry." Iris positioned herself at the kitchen island, exactly where she'd sat during their first dinner together. "How was your day?" "Productive. Finished the treehouse platform, started on the walls. Should be done in another week." He glanced at her. "How was yours?" "Frustrating. My editor called, wants another round of revisions." "Did you tell her no?" "I told her I'd think about it." Daniel set down his knife. "Iris, I know, but it's complicated." "It's not complicated. You said you were going to fight for your story. That was 2 weeks ago. What changed?" She looked away, fingers tapping against the counter. "She implied that if I didn't make the changes, they might not pick up my next contract. So she threatened you." "She didn't say it like that, but that's what it was. A threat disguised as concern." Daniel returned to chopping, his movements sharp. "What does your gut say?" "My gut says she's wrong about the changes. That what she wants would make the story safer, but worse. That kids deserve better than safe stories." "Then tell her that." "And if I lose the contract?" "Then you lose the contract. But you keep your integrity." He looked up at her. "You told me once that you'd rather be poor and making art than comfortable and miserable. Did you mean it?" Iris was quiet for a long moment. "Yes." "Then act like it." "That's easy for you to say. You have stable work, regular clients. You're not waiting on one editor's decision to determine whether you can pay rent next month. Daniel stopped cooking entirely, turned to face her fully. You're right. I don't know what that's like, but I do know what it's like to compromise on something important and regret it. And I know that you're good enough at what you do that even if this publisher walks away, others won't. You're talented, Iris, but talent doesn't mean anything if you're too scared to defend it. I'm not scared. She stopped herself. Okay, I am scared. Terrified, actually, but being scared doesn't mean I'm wrong to hesitate. No, but it does mean you're making decisions based on fear instead of conviction, and that's not who you are. Daniel picked up the curry paste, started working it into the coconut milk. When you left for that week, you said you were scared of trusting us. But you came back anyway. You chose courage even though it was hard. This is the same thing, just different context. Relationships and careers aren't the same. Aren't they? Both require you to believe you're worth fighting for. Both require you to stand up for what matters, even when it's easier to fold. Both require you to trust that you're capable of handling whatever comes next. He stirred the curry, adjusted the heat. I can't make this decision for you. But I can tell you that watching you compromise on your art because someone threatened your security makes me angry. Not at you, at a system that forces artists to choose between integrity and survival. Iris wheeled closer, watching him cook with an intensity that suggested she was processing more than just his words. You really think I'm good enough that other publishers would want me? I think you're good enough that you could self-publish and build an audience on your own terms if you wanted to. But yes, I think other publishers would fight for you. The question is whether you believe that. I want to. Then start acting like it's true. Send your editor an email. Tell her no. Explain why. And if she kills the contract, you'll figure out the next step. But at least you'll do it with your spine intact. She laughed, surprising and genuine. Has anyone ever told you that you're incredibly pushy when you think you're right? Mia tells me regularly, usually when I'm making her eat vegetables. Daniel plated the curry, brought it to the table. But I'm only pushy about things that matter. And you matter. Your work matters. I'm not going to watch you diminish either one just because someone with power tried to scare you into compliance. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the curry turning out better than Daniel had any right to expect, given his inexperience with Thai cooking. Iris took several bites before setting down her fork and pulling out her phone. What are you doing? Daniel asked. Emailing my editor. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. Telling her the revisions would compromise the story's integrity. Explaining my reasoning. Offering to discuss alternatives, but making it clear I won't fundamentally change the narrative. She paused, read it over, then hit send before she could second-guess herself. There, done. How do you feel? Terrified. Empowered. Probably going to throw up later. She set down her phone, met his eyes. But also, right. This feels right. Good. Even if she cancels the contract? Especially if she does. Because then you'll know exactly what kind of publisher she is, and you can move forward accordingly. They finished dinner and moved to the living room, Iris transferring to the couch while Daniel cleaned up the kitchen. When he joined her, she'd curled into the corner with the wine glass he'd poured her earlier, looking both exhausted and relieved. Thank you, she said as he sat down beside her. For what? For pushing, for not letting me take the easy way out. For believing I'm worth fighting for, even when I'm not sure I believe it myself. Daniel put his arm around her shoulders, pulled her closer. Someone once told me that you have to train yourself to see past the obvious stuff. Look for what a thing is trying to be. I think you're trying to be someone who doesn't compromise on what matters. I'm just reminding you of that. She set down her wine glass, shifted so she could look at him properly. Can I tell you something? Always. When I met you, I thought you were going to be like everyone else. Nice enough, but ultimately looking for someone easier. Someone who didn't come with complications and access requirements, and the constant reminder that the world isn't built for bodies like mine. Her voice was soft, careful. But you're not like that. You see the complications and you just problem solve, build a ramp, research curry recipes, push me to stand up for myself. You make hard things feel manageable. That's just basic partnership. No, it's not. Most people want the relationship without the work. You're willing to do the work because you actually care about the person. She touched his face, traced the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. That's rare, Daniel, and I need you to know I see it. He turned his head, kissed her palm. I care about you. That's not complicated. Everything about me is complicated. Okay, then I care about you anyway. She kissed him, slow and deliberate, the kind of kiss that felt like a promise rather than a question. When she pulled back, her eyes were serious. I want you to meet Mia, she said. Not because I'm ready. I'm not sure I'll ever feel completely ready, but because I trust you, and because I think she should know that the person her dad texts during lunch breaks is real. Daniel's heart did something complicated in his chest. Are you sure? No, but I'm choosing to do it anyway. Isn't that what you've been teaching me? Choose courage even when you're scared? Yeah, that's exactly what I've been teaching you. Then teach me how to meet a 6-year-old without completely messing it up. Daniel laughed, pulled her closer. There's no way to mess it up. Just be yourself. Mia's got good instincts about people. If you're genuine, she'll know. What if she doesn't like me? Then we'll figure it out. But I don't think that's going to happen. Kissed her forehead. She already knows you exist. She asks about you sometimes, my friend who I text. She's curious, not worried. What have you told her about me? That you're an artist? That you're smart and funny and make me think about things differently? That you're important to me? He paused. I haven't mentioned the wheelchair yet. I wanted you to be there for that conversation so she could ask questions and you could answer them however you're comfortable. Iris absorbed this. That's thoughtful. Thank you. Kids are concrete thinkers. She's going to notice the chair immediately and probably ask questions that adults would consider rude. I want you to know that's coming so you're not blindsided. I'm used to kid questions. They're usually more honest than adult questions. She settled against him, her head on his shoulder. When do you want to do this? Saturday? We could go to the park, neutral territory, low pressure. If it's going well, maybe ice cream after. If it's not, we have an easy exit. Saturday works, but Daniel? Yeah? If this goes badly, if Mia doesn't like me or I say something wrong or it's just weird, we're going to be okay, right? Us? He tightened his arm around her. We're going to be okay. Mia's opinion matters because she's my daughter, but she's not the deciding vote on whether I care about you. That's already decided. Okay, good. I just needed to hear you say it. They stayed on the couch for another hour, talking about nothing important, work schedules and weather, and the book Iris was reading about forest ecology. Around 10, Iris reluctantly announced she should head home. Daniel walked her to the door, down the ramp, and stood in the driveway while she loaded her wheelchair and settled into her car. Hey, he called before she could close the door. She looked up. Yeah? I'm proud of you for sending that email, for choosing to meet Mia, for doing hard things even when you're scared. Iris smiled, and this time it reached her eyes, genuine and unguarded. I learned from someone stubborn. Wonder who that could be. No idea. Total mystery. He watched her drive away, then went back inside to a house that felt different now, fuller somehow, like it was expanding to accommodate new possibility. His phone buzzed with a text from Iris. Thank you for tonight. For everything. Anytime, I mean it. You make me want to be braver. You're already brave. I just remind you of it sometimes. Same thing, not even close. But I'll take the credit anyway. The next day, Daniel told Mia about Saturday's plan over breakfast. She listened with the focused attention she brought to important announcements, then asked the question he'd been expecting. Is she your girlfriend? Daniel considered how to answer. She's someone I care about a lot, someone I want you to meet because she's important to me. But is she your girlfriend? Would that be okay with you if she was? Mia thought about this while methodically eating her cereal. Emma says her mom's boyfriend is nice, but weird, because he tries too hard. Is your friend going to try too hard? I don't think so. She's pretty honest about who she is. Good. I don't like it when people are fake. She paused. What's her name? Iris. That's a flower name. Does she like flowers? I don't know. You can ask her on Saturday. I'm going to ask her lots of questions. Is that okay? That's perfect. She likes questions. Daniel finished his coffee. But buddy, there's something I should tell you before you meet her. Iris uses a wheelchair. Do you know what that means? Like the lady at the library who has the cool chair with the motor? Similar, but Iris's chair doesn't have a motor. She pushes it with her hands. Daniel crouched down to Mia's level. She was in an accident a few years ago that hurt her back. So now she uses the wheelchair to get around instead of walking. It's just part of how she moves through the world. Mia processed this with the straightforward pragmatism of childhood. Can she still do stuff? She can do lots of stuff. She's an artist. She draws pictures for children's books. She goes to parks and coffee shops and drives her own car. The wheelchair just means she does things a little differently than people who walk. Can I ask her about it? You can ask her anything you want, as long as you're respectful. If she doesn't want to answer something, she'll tell you. Okay. Mia returned to her cereal, apparently satisfied. Then, after a moment, Dad? Yeah? Are you happy? Like, more happy than before? The question landed with unexpected weight. Daniel thought about the past 2 months, the way his world had expanded to include someone else's perspective, someone else's needs, someone else's presence in his carefully structured life. The way he'd started looking forward to lunch breaks because that's when Iris usually texted. The way his house felt less like a fortress and more like a home that could hold multiple people. Yeah, buddy, I am. Good. You should be happy. She finished her cereal, carried her bowl to the sink with the independence she insisted on lately. I hope Iris is nice, but even if she's not, I hope you stay happy. I hope so too. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, the kind of late spring day that made living in the Pacific Northwest feel like a reward for surviving winter. Daniel and Mia got to the park early, claimed a picnic table near the playground, and waited. Mia vibrated with contained energy, asking every 2 minutes if Iris was here yet. She'll be here at 10, Daniel said for the 4th time. We've got 3 more minutes. What if she's late? Then we wait. What if she doesn't come? She'll come, she promised. At exactly 10 o'clock, Iris appeared at the park entrance, wheeling up the paved path with the steady rhythm Daniel had come to recognize. She'd dressed carefully, jeans and a green shirt that brought out the color of her eyes, her hair loose around her shoulders. When she spotted them, she raised one hand in a wave that looked more nervous than confident. Mia saw her and went very still, that particular stillness kids adopted when they were processing something new and important. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. Ready? He asked quietly. Is that her? That's her. She's pretty. Yeah, she is. Daniel stood as Iris reached their table. Hey. Hey. Iris looked at Mia, then back at Daniel, clearly uncertain how to begin. You must be Mia. Mia studied Iris with open curiosity, the kind of frank assessment that would have made an adult uncomfortable but which children wielded without self-consciousness. Your dad's friend. I am. The one he texts during lunch. That's me. He smiles at his phone when you text him. It's kind of weird. Daniel felt his face heat. Mia! But Iris laughed, genuine and surprised. Does he? That's good to know. Mia hopped off the bench, moved closer to Iris's chair with the fearless approach of someone who hadn't learned to be careful yet. Your chair is cool. Can you do tricks with it? Define tricks. Like wheelies or spins or jumps. I can do wheelies. Want to see? Mia nodded enthusiastically, and Iris proceeded to demonstrate by tipping back slightly on the rear wheels, balancing for a moment before settling back down. Mia's eyes went wide. That's so cool. Can you teach me? Maybe when you're older and have your own wheelchair. Why do you use a wheelchair? Daniel tensed, but Iris handled it with the same straightforward honesty she brought to everything else. I was in a car accident a few years ago. It hurt my back and now I can't walk very well. So I used the chair to get around instead. Does it hurt? Sometimes, but mostly it just works differently than legs. Can I touch it? Sure. Just ask first before you touch someone's wheelchair, okay? Some people don't like it. Why not? Because it's part of their body space, like you wouldn't want someone touching you without asking. Iris gestured to the armrest. Go ahead. Mia ran her hands along the frame, testing the wheels. examining the mechanics with the focused interest she brought to understanding how things worked. It's like a bike, but for sitting. That's a pretty good description. Do you ever get tired of pushing it? Sometimes. That's why I have good arms. Iris flexed and Mia giggled. Daniel watched this exchange with something approaching awe. Iris had been nervous. He'd seen it in the way she'd approached the table, the slight tension in her shoulders. But with Mia, she'd relaxed into honesty, answering questions without defensiveness or discomfort, treating Mia's curiosity as natural rather than intrusive. "Can we go to the playground?" Mia asked, looking between them. "Sure," Daniel said, "if Iris wants to." "I definitely want to." Iris followed as Mia ran ahead to the play structure, Daniel walking beside her. That went better than I expected. Kids are like that. No filter, but no judgment either. She's a lot like you, the way she processes information, the way she looks at things. She's better than me, less cynical. They reached the playground and settled on a bench with a clear view while Mia immediately scaled the climbing structure with the confidence of someone who knew her own capabilities. For a while they just watched her play, existing in comfortable parallel silence. "Thank you for this," Iris said eventually, "for letting me meet her, for trusting me with someone this important." "You're important too. It makes sense for important people to know each other." Mia appeared suddenly, breathing hard from running. "Iris, do you want to see how high I can swing?" "Absolutely." They spent the next hour at the playground, Mia demonstrating her skills, Iris providing enthusiastic commentary, Daniel pushing Mia on the swings when his daughter demanded higher, 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 with the fearlessness that gave him minor heart attacks. At one point, Mia insisted on pushing Iris around the paved path, struggling with the weight, but determined to manage it. Iris let her, offering gentle directions about steering, and Daniel's chest did something complicated watching the two of them figure out how to navigate together. Eventually, Mia announced she was hungry, and they decided on ice cream from a truck parked near the entrance. Daniel bought 3 cones, chocolate for Mia, vanilla for himself, strawberry for Iris, and they found a shaded area where they could eat without melting in the sun. "Iris," Mia said around a mouthful of chocolate, "do you like my dad?" "Mia," Daniel started, but Iris waved him off. "Yeah," she said simply. "I like him a lot." "Like boyfriend-girlfriend like?" "Something like that." Mia considered this while her ice cream dripped down her hand. "Are you going to be around a lot now? Would that be okay with you?" "I guess, as long as you don't try to be my mom. Emma's mom's boyfriend tries to act like her dad, and Emma says it's annoying." "I wouldn't try to be your mom," Iris said seriously. "You already have a dad who's pretty great at being your dad. I'd just be someone else who cares about both of you." "Like a bonus person?" "Exactly like a bonus person." Mia seemed satisfied with this. She finished her ice cream, then asked if she could go back to the playground for a little while longer. Daniel agreed, and they watched her run off toward the swings. "Bonus person," Iris repeated softly. "I like that." "She likes you. I can tell." "How?" "She asked if you'd be around a lot. She only asks that about people she wants to keep." Daniel finished his ice cream, crumpled the napkin. "This went well." "Better than well." "She's wonderful, Daniel. Smart and curious and completely herself." "She gets that from her mom, the being herself part." Iris looked at him. "You never talk about her." "Not much to say. We were young and stupid and definitely not ready to be parents. She tried for about 6 months, then decided she wasn't cut out for it, signed over custody, and left. I get a card from her every few years, usually around Mia's birthday, but that's it." "Does Mia ask about her?" "Sometimes. I tell her the truth, that her mom loved her but couldn't be what she needed, and that's okay because I love her enough for both of us." Daniel watched Mia on the swings, pumping her legs to gain height. "It used to make me angry, the leaving, but now I'm just grateful. Because Mia and I figured out how to be a family without needing anyone else to complete us. Until now." "Until now," he agreed. "But it's different. You're not completing us. You're just adding to what already works." "Bonus person," Iris said again, and this time she was smiling. "I really do like that." They stayed at the park until Mia finally wore herself out, returning to announce that she was tired and wanted to go home. Daniel suggested they all go back to his place for lunch, and Iris agreed without hesitation. On the drive home, Daniel caught Mia singing quietly in the back seat, the sign she was happy and content. At the house, Mia immediately dragged Iris to her room to show her the extensive stuffed animal collection and explain each one's complicated backstory. Daniel made sandwiches and listened to Iris asking genuine questions about the animals' personalities and histories, never once talking down to Mia or treating her interests as childish. After lunch, Mia requested a movie, and they all ended up on the couch. Mia between Daniel and Iris having transferred from her chair with Daniel's offered hand for balance. Halfway through the film, Mia fell asleep with her head on Daniel's lap and her feet stretched toward Iris. "She likes you," Daniel said quietly, not wanting to wake his daughter. "I like her too. She's exactly who I hoped she'd be." "Yeah?" "Smart, honest, comfortable with herself." Iris reached over, gently adjusted the blanket Daniel had draped over Mia. "You're a good father, Daniel, the best kind. The kind who makes it look easy, even though it's not. It's not easy, but it's worth it. That's what makes you good at it. You don't resent the difficulty." She looked at him across Mia's sleeping form. "Thank you for letting me into this. Into your world. I know it wasn't a small thing. Thank you for being brave enough to step into it." They stayed like that until Mia woke up an hour later, groggy and disoriented. Iris made her excuses to leave shortly after, and Daniel walked her to her car while Mia waved from the doorway. "Same time next week?" Iris asked as she loaded her wheelchair. "You want to do this again?" "I want to do this a lot, if that's okay." "That's more than okay." She kissed him, brief but certain, then drove away. Daniel returned to the house to find Mia waiting with a serious expression. "So?" he asked. "What's the verdict?" "She's good," Mia pronounced. "She can stay." "I'm glad you approve." "Dad?" "Yeah?" "I think you should keep her. She makes you smile the way I make you smile." Daniel pulled his daughter into a hug, feeling his world shift to accommodate new possibility. "I think so too, buddy. I think so too." That night, after Mia was asleep and the house had settled into its familiar quiet, Daniel sat at his kitchen table with a beer he wasn't drinking and thought about how quickly life could shift from contained to expansive. 3 months ago, his world had consisted of work, parenting, and the careful maintenance of boundaries designed to keep complications out. Now those boundaries felt less like protection and more like limitations he'd outgrown. His phone buzzed with a text from Iris. "Mia's verdict? She said you're good, and I should keep you. High praise from a 6-year-old, the highest. She doesn't give approval lightly." "What about your verdict?" Daniel stared at the question, understanding what she was really asking. Not whether he approved of how the day had gone, but whether he was ready to commit to what came next, the integration of their lives, the slow building of something that looked like family. "My verdict is that I'm all in, if you are." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "I'm terrified. But yes, I'm in." "Good, because I'm pretty sure Mia's already planning our next outing." "What did you tell her about us?" "That you're someone important to me, that you'll be around more now, that she should get used to you being part of our lives. And she was okay with that?" "She was more than okay. She asked if you'd come to her school play next month." The response took longer this time. When it came, Daniel could feel the emotion behind the words even through the screen. "I would love to come to her school play. Warning, it's going to be chaos. 6-year-olds in costumes, forgotten lines. At least one kid will cry." "Perfect. I'll bring my sketchbook." Over the next few weeks, Iris became a regular presence in their lives. She came to dinners on weeknights, helped Mia with an art project for school, spent Saturday mornings at the park with both of them. Daniel watched his daughter warm to Iris with the easy acceptance of childhood, asking questions about the wheelchair with decreasing frequency as it became just another fact of Iris's existence, requesting that Iris read bedtime stories because she did the voices better, including Iris in drawings that had previously featured only Daniel and Mia's extensive stuffed animal collection. The integration wasn't seamless. There were moments of awkwardness, Mia asking why Iris couldn't come to the trampoline park, Daniel having to explain accessibility in terms a 6-year-old could understand. Iris getting frustrated when a restaurant they'd planned to visit turned out to have steps and no ramp, the evening derailed by logistics. Daniel learning to anticipate access needs he'd never had to consider before. Iris learning to accept help without feeling diminished by it. But mostly, it worked. Slowly, carefully, like building something that needed to last, they figured out how to be 3 people instead of 2 plus 1. The breakthrough came on a Wednesday evening in late June. Daniel was finishing the treehouse, the last details that would make it complete, when Iris arrived with Mia after picking her up from school. It had become their routine. Iris handled afternoon pickup on Wednesdays, giving Daniel extra workshop time, and both of them time to build their own relationship independent of him. "Dad," Mia called, running into the workshop with Iris wheeling behind her. "Iris showed me her new book. It's about a girl who builds a fort." "Yeah?" Daniel set down his sander, gave Mia his full attention. "What kind of fort?" "A tree fort, with a rope ladder and a telescope and a secret door." Mia bounced on her toes. "Can we put a secret door in my treehouse?" "I think we can manage that." Daniel looked at Iris. "How was pickup?" "Good. Mia's teacher wants to talk to you about the art project. Apparently Mia's contribution was remarkably sophisticated for her age." "I drew Iris's wheelchair," Mia said proudly, "with all the right parts. Miss Chen said I paid good attention to details." "That's my girl." Daniel pulled Mia into a quick hug, then caught Iris's expression, something soft and pleased that made his chest tight. "Want to see the treehouse? It's basically done." They walked to the backyard where the structure stood complete. Walls, roof, windows, the secret door Mia had just requested already incorporated into the design because Daniel had anticipated his daughter's love of hidden things. A rope ladder hung from the entrance, and inside he'd built a small bench, shelving for books and toys, and a pulley system for hauling supplies up and down. Mia's eyes went wide. "It's perfect. Want to try it out?" She was up the ladder before he finished asking, her delighted squeals echoing from inside the structure. Daniel turned to Iris, found her looking at the treehouse with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What?" he asked. "You built this for her. Every detail, every choice, it's all about what she needs and wants. You didn't take shortcuts. You didn't compromise." She looked at him. "You love her so completely it's almost overwhelming to witness." "She's my daughter. That's the job." "No, that's beyond the job. That's devotion, pure and uncomplicated." Iris wheeled closer to the structure, looked up at where Mia was testing the pulley system. "My parents loved me, but it always felt conditional, like I had to earn it by being successful or impressive or exceptional. You don't make Mia earn anything. You just love her." Daniel sat down on the grass beside her chair. "Is that what your parents did? Made you earn their approval?" "Not consciously, but yeah. Every achievement was celebrated, every failure was a disappointment. Even after the accident, they'd say they just wanted me to be happy, but what they really wanted was for me to be successful in ways they understood. It took me years to realize their love came with expectations attached." "That must have been exhausting." "It was, still is sometimes." She looked down at him. "But being around you and Mia, watching how you are with each other, it's teaching me what unconditional actually looks like. You don't need her to be anything other than herself. And she knows that. You can see it in how comfortable she is in her own skin. I want her to know she's enough exactly as she is. That's the only job that matters." "You're doing it right." Iris reached down, ran her fingers through his hair in a gesture that felt both intimate and casual. "She's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her. She made me better than I was." Mia appeared at the treehouse entrance, calling down, "Dad, Iris, come see the secret door." "I can't really climb the ladder," Iris said quietly. "I know, but I can." Daniel stood, started up the ladder while Iris positioned herself where she could see through the window. For the next 20 minutes, Mia gave them a comprehensive tour of every feature, explaining how she'd use each space and what adventures she'd have in this structure her father had built. When Mia finally climbed down to get a snack from the house, Daniel descended the ladder and found Iris looking thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About permanence. About building things that last. About the difference between structure and home." She met his eyes. About the fact that I have a toothbrush in your bathroom and spare clothes in your dresser and my sketchbook lives on your coffee table. About how that happened without either of us making it official. Daniel's heart rate picked up. Does it need to be official? I don't know, does it? She wheeled closer. We've been doing this for 3 months, seeing each other almost every day, including each other in our lives, meeting each other's important people. At what point do we stop calling this dating and start calling it something else? What do you want to call it? I want to call it real, committed. The kind of thing where we're not just seeing where it goes. We're actively building towards something. She paused. I want to know if you're thinking about forever or if you're thinking about right now. Daniel sat down on the grass again, pulled her hand into his. I'm thinking about my daughter asking if you'll be at her next birthday party. I'm thinking about the fact that I've started planning my schedule around Wednesday pickups because I know you'll be there. I'm thinking about the drawer in my dresser that's become yours and how normal that feels. I'm thinking about the way Mia includes you in her future plans, like it's assumed you'll be there. That's not an answer. Yes, it is, because all of that. That's what forever looks like when you're building it one day at a time. I don't need to declare it to make it real. It already is. Iris squeezed his hand. I got the email back from my editor. The subject change felt deliberate. Daniel waited. She said no to my pushback, said if I wouldn't make the revisions, she couldn't move forward with the contract. Iris's voice was steady, but he could hear the emotion underneath. So I lost the contract. The book won't be published with them. How do you feel about that? Scared, relieved, proud of myself for standing up for the work, terrified that I made the wrong choice. She looked at him. But also, okay, because I know the story I wanted to tell is still intact, and I'd rather have an unpublished story I believe in than a published story I compromised on. What happens now? Now I shop it to other publishers. See if anyone else wants it, and if they don't, I'll figure something else out. Self-publish maybe, or just move on to the next project. She smiled, small but genuine. I'm choosing to believe I'm good enough that this isn't the end, just a detour. You are good enough, better than good enough. I'm starting to believe that, because you keep believing it even when I don't. She pulled her hand back, folded it with her other one in her lap. That's what you do, you know. You hold space for people to become who they're trying to be. You did it with Mia, built her a treehouse that assumes she'll be brave and adventurous. You did it with me. Treated me like someone capable and strong before I felt that way about myself. That's just seeing what's already there. No, it's seeing what could be there and believing in it hard enough that it becomes real. She looked toward the house where Mia had disappeared. I want to be that for you too. I want to be the person who sees your potential and believes in it, who makes space for you to be more than just Mia's dad or the guy who builds things, who reminds you that you deserve to be loved as completely as you love other people. Daniel felt something shift in his chest, that sense of a structure settling into place, finding its final form. You already are that person. Good, then I'm doing it right. Mia returned with apple slices and an announcement that she wanted to sleep in the treehouse that night. Daniel explained that while the treehouse was finished, they needed to do a safety check first and maybe wait until the weekend for the inaugural sleepover. Mia negotiated this down to a campout in the backyard with the treehouse's home base, and Daniel found himself agreeing because his daughter's joy was infectious, and because Iris offered to stay and help supervise. They spent the evening setting up a tent, making s'mores over a small fire pit Daniel had installed last summer, and telling stories while darkness settled around them. Mia eventually fell asleep in the tent, and Daniel and Iris sat beside the dying fire, her hand in his, watching stars appear in the clearing sky. I could get used to this, Iris said quietly. Camping? This. Us. The whole thing. She turned to look at him, her face shadowed but her eyes catching firelight. I know we've been taking it slow, building carefully, making sure Mia's okay, and we're okay, and everything's sustainable. But I need you to know, I'm not going anywhere. This isn't temporary for me. It's not a trial run. It's the real thing. Daniel brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. It's the real thing for me too. Has been since you challenged me in that first coffee shop, and I realized you saw through every defense I'd built. So what do we do now? We keep building, one day at a time, one choice at a time, We figure out what a life together looks like and we build toward that. He paused. And maybe, when you're ready, you stop keeping your apartment as a backup plan and we make this official. Iris was very still. Are you asking me to move in? I'm saying I want you here. Not just Wednesdays and weekends, not just when it's convenient. I want you here in the morning when Mia wakes up asking about breakfast. I want you here at night when I'm too tired to do anything but sit on the couch. I want your art supplies taking up half my workshop and your books on my shelves and your presence in every corner of this life I've built. That's a big step. I know. And if it's too soon, we can wait. But I also know that I've spent 3 years building a life that felt complete, and then you showed up, and I realized complete isn't the same as full. You make this life full, Iris. You and Mia, you're what makes this feel like home instead of just a house I maintain. She leaned forward, kissed him with a tenderness that felt like answer enough. When she pulled back, she was smiling through tears. I'll need studio space, somewhere with good light where I can spread out my work. The spare bedroom, it's yours. And I'll need to keep some level of independence, my own income, my own projects. I can't be just your girlfriend or just Mia's bonus person. I wouldn't want you to be. You're Iris, artist, storyteller, woman who challenges me to be better. That's who I'm asking to move in. When? Whenever you're ready. Next week, next month. There's no rush, but know that the offer stands. He squeezed her hand. I love you. I should have said that first, but I'm saying it now. I love you for exactly who you are. Complications, wheelchair, stubborn artistic integrity, all of it. You make my life better just by being in it. Iris was crying openly now, but she was also smiling. I love you too. Have for weeks, but was too scared to say it. Too scared you'd realize I was more trouble than I was worth. You're worth everything. Don't doubt that. They sat together until the fire burned down to embers and the night grew cold enough that they needed to move inside. Daniel carried Mia to her bed while Iris transferred to the couch, and when he returned from tucking in his daughter, he found Iris looking at her phone with an expression he couldn't read. What is it? He asked. Email from a different publisher, one of the ones I sent the manuscript to last week. She looked up at him, eyes wide. They want the book. Not just the book, they want a 3-book deal. They love the story exactly as it is, no revisions to the core narrative. Iris, that's amazing. I know, I didn't think... She laughed, slightly hysterical. I stood up for the work and it actually paid off. You were right. You were right. You trusted your gut and fought for what mattered. This is you succeeding on your own terms. She set down her phone, wheeled over to where he stood. Move me to the couch properly. I want to celebrate with you, and I can't do that from this chair. Daniel helped her transfer, settled beside her, and pulled her close. They stayed that way for a long time, talking about the book deal and moving logistics, and the strange miracle of life rearranging itself to accommodate love when you were brave enough to let it. The weeks that followed were controlled chaos. Iris gave notice on her apartment, packed up 3 years of independent living, and gradually migrated her existence into Daniel's house, until it became their house. The spare bedroom transformed into a studio filled with art supplies and natural light. Her books integrated with his on the shelves. Her coffee maker replaced his dying one. Mia helped arrange Iris's studio with the seriousness of someone conducting important work, asking questions about every supply and declaring that she wanted to be an artist too when she grew up. There were adjustments. Learning to navigate shared space with different mobility needs, figuring out whose turn it was to handle morning routine or dinner prep, negotiating the balance between Daniel's need for structure and Iris's more fluid creative schedule, teaching Mia that Iris's studio was off limits unless invited, just like Daniel's workshop. But mostly, it worked. Better than worked, it thrived. The school play happened in early September. Daniel and Iris sat in the crowded cafeteria on folding chairs that were too small for adults, watching Mia play a tree in a production that was exactly as chaotic as Daniel had predicted. When Mia delivered her single line, "The forest welcomes you," with solemn importance, Iris grabbed Daniel's hand and squeezed tight. After the performance, Mia ran to them with the boundless energy of someone who'd just accomplished something important. "Did you see me? I didn't forget my line." "You were perfect," Iris said, crouching down to Mia's level from her chair. "The best tree in the whole forest." "Really?" "Absolutely. I might need to draw you as a tree for my next book. Mia's face lit up. You'd put me in a book? If you'll let me. Yes. Can I be the main character? We'll see. Main characters have to be brave and kind and willing to do hard things. Think you can handle that? Mia looked at Iris with utter seriousness. I can handle it. I'm brave like Dad and stubborn like you. Iris laughed, surprising and genuine. That's a dangerous combination. The best combination, Mia corrected, then ran off to find her friends, leaving Daniel and Iris in the emptying cafeteria. She's right, Daniel said. That is the best combination. Brave and stubborn? You and me. Us. This whole thing we've built. He took her hand. I know it hasn't even been 6 months. I know by conventional standards we moved fast. But I don't regret any of it. Neither do I. Iris looked around the cafeteria, at other families gathering their kids, at teachers breaking down the set, at the ordinary chaos of community. I used to think I was supposed to rebuild my life alone. Prove I didn't need anyone. Be completely independent to show the accident didn't break me. And now? Now I think independence isn't the same as isolation. I can be strong and still need people. I can be capable and still accept help. I can be whole on my own and still be better with you. She met his eyes. You taught me that, you and Mia both. They left the school together, Mia chattering about the play and the costume and the cookies someone's mom had brought for the cast party. At home, after Mia was finally asleep, Daniel and Iris sat on the back porch looking at the treehouse silhouetted against the night sky. I've been thinking, Iris said, about that bench, the one at the park where we had our second date. What about it? I want it to stay ours. Even as life gets busy and we build this whole life together, I want that bench to be the place we go back to, where we remember how this started. Okay. Every Saturday morning that we can manage it? Every Saturday morning that we can manage it. She leaned against him. I want to keep choosing this, Daniel, not just now when everything's new and exciting, but later when it's ordinary, when we're tired and stressed and dealing with real life instead of the honeymoon phase. I want to keep choosing you and Mia and this life we're building. Then we will. Because choosing doesn't stop. It's the work that makes love last. He kissed the top of her head. And you're worth choosing every single day. Months turned into a year. The bench remained their Saturday tradition when schedules allowed. Iris's 3-book deal progressed, each manuscript better than the last, each one carrying the integrity she'd fought for. Daniel's business grew through word of mouth, his reputation for quality craftsmanship spreading until he had to start turning down work. Mia turned 7, then started 2nd grade with the confidence of a child who knew she was loved completely. And through it all, Daniel and Iris built something that looked like forever. Not because they'd promised it to each other, but because they'd chosen it repeatedly. In the small moments and the large ones, in the easy days and the hard ones, in the ordinary rhythm of breakfast and bedtime and everything in between. On a Saturday morning in late October, they returned to the bench as usual. The park was quieter now, with fall settling in, most families choosing indoor activities over chilly outdoor ones. But Daniel and Iris had the path to themselves, the morning crisp and clear, leaves turning colors that Iris immediately started sketching. I got another email from my publisher, she said while drawing, her voice casual. Good news or bad news? Complicated news. They want to do a book tour for the first release. 5 cities over 2 weeks. Readings, signings, interviews. Daniel absorbed this. That's huge. It is, but it would mean being away from home, from you and Mia, right during the school year. We'd manage. Mia would be proud of you. So would I. Iris set down her sketchbook, looked at him directly. I want you to come with me. Both of you. Take Mia out of school for 2 weeks. Make it an adventure. Let her see what her bonus person does for work. You want us to come on your book tour? I want you there because you're my family. Because achievements don't mean anything if I can't share them with the people I love. Because showing Mia that creative work is real work and worth celebrating seems important. She paused. And because I'm selfish and I'll miss you both too much if I go alone. Daniel pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo and the crisp autumn air. Then we'll come. All of us. Together. You're sure? It's a lot of logistics. We'll figure it out. That's what we do. We figure things out together. They sat on their bench while morning stretched toward afternoon, making plans and dreaming about the future and existing in the particular comfort of people who'd learned each other's languages. Eventually, they headed home to find Mia working on a school project at the kitchen table, her materials spread out in the organized chaos that characterized her approach to creative work. "How's it going, buddy?" Daniel asked. "Good. I'm writing about my family." She held up a paper covered in careful handwriting and illustrations. "See? That's you building things, and that's Iris drawing, and that's me in my treehouse." Daniel read the title. "My family is small but perfect." "It is perfect," he agreed, catching Iris's eye across the room. "Absolutely perfect." And standing there in the kitchen with his daughter's art project in his hands, and the woman he loved arranging flowers Mia had picked earlier, Daniel understood that perfect didn't mean without complications. It meant choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. It meant building something slowly and carefully instead of rushing toward a finish line. It meant loving people for exactly who they were and creating space for them to become who they were trying to be. He'd started this journey terrified of variables, convinced that safety meant keeping life small and controlled. But Iris had taught him that the best things in life were the variables you chose, the complications that made existence richer, the challenges that forced you to grow, the love that required you to be brave enough to stay. The bench in the park remained theirs. The treehouse stood strong in the backyard. Iris's studio filled with new projects and ambitious dreams. Mia grew taller and bolder and more herself with each passing day. And Daniel built a life that was full instead of just complete, full of laughter and creativity and the particular chaos of people who loved each other enough to keep choosing each other day after ordinary day, building something that would last. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. And real, Daniel had learned, was always worth fighting for.